we're back in the studio. Well, you can see it's a different studio today. We are improvising. Jim is the master of figuring things out. And so our big fancy studio that he built, unfortunately, does not have air conditioning. We're in the Central Valley. We're looking at triple digits right now. And so we kind of had to improvise and figure it out. And so he created a second studio downstairs, complete with a fireplace. Because, you know, when it's 100 degrees, you got, thank you. Got to have the fireplace. And so we're here for our very first episode. Forgive us for angles and camera and audio, things that Jim worries about, but the audience is like never notices.
I do.
You're so hard on yourself.
I always do, yeah.
So anyway, we're going to our second episode back since the passing of Jim's mother, Cheryl. Again, we want to honor her, keep her memory alive. Jim, tell us a little bit about the tree that you planted.
Yeah, so after you guys left, my brother and I were talking. My whole family was talking, and the eerie part of it is my mom always said, like, just bury our ashes out on your property and plant a tree. Well, that's kind of it's out there. And what if we move? You know, it's kind of one of those things. My wife and I were talking, like, what if we end up moving? You know, then the kids, you know, kind of like, well, grandma's over there at the old house and so on. So we just decided to purchase some trees, and we dedicated them and had a prayer for them and stuff. And so when the trees grow, we could always look back, and I wouldn't mind putting a plaque or
I was thinking a bench.
You know, Leslie and I were talking about the bench,
shade.
But no one's going to go over there and sit. It's like, you know, so and actually it's on the side of the studio, so we're hoping that it's going to grow and develop shade for upstairs. So yeah.
Wait, what kind of trees?
They're redwood ash. They're on every school campus in America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're like one of those really big, huge, you know, shade trees. So I didn't want to plant something that wasn't going to benefit the property and stuff. So, and it'll get big enough. We were thinking about she loved wind chimes, so we'll probably put some wind chimes on.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah. So
he's like, we're not going to sit under it.
No.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that. And, you know, we'll continue to honor her memory. And today we have another amazing story. I know I say this a lot, but these stories, they're always they're amazing. And so I want to introduce to the show, Tammy Wallace.
Thank you.
So, Tammy, where's our audience? Come on, audience.
Yeah.
Yes. There we go.
Thank you, everyone.
Tammy, thank you for coming.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes. It was this also is a little improvised, right? Because we had initially contacted your husband, Pastor Mark Wallace. And I think maybe in our last text, I said, I think, you know, if you want, feel free, bring your wife, bring a friend along. Little did I know it was the actual storyteller.
Yes.
So you know, God is good. God is great.
He decided to take a nap, you know, for 28 days. So
so you took a. Yeah. So we're gonna get to that.
So I had to record all of the information.
Yes, and you were the one that I was reading about, and we'll let the audience in on that in a minute here. But I want to start from the beginning. You're from Catoosa, Oklahoma.
Yes, actually, I'm from Southern California.
Oh, okay.
But when I was 9, we moved to Oklahoma. So I lived there for several years. But the majority of my life has been spent in California.
Okay, California girl. And so you're in Catoosa. You're Tulsa first.
Yes.
And you're attending a church. Do you remember what church were you at?
Eastland Assembly of God.
Eastland Assembly of God.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma.
You're praising. You're worshiping. And
actually, I was a rebellious teenager that didn't even want to be there.
All right, tell us the truth. Yeah, give us the real.
Yeah, we moved churches. My parents did. I was 17, and I was an ornery kid that really was a hurting kid, didn't really want anything to do with God, to be honest with you. And so very confused. I had a rough upbringing.
Okay.
So my parents decided to change churches, wanted to find a church with a big youth group. So the first Sunday that we changed churches, that Sunday, they made me go to Sunday school. So I'm in this room by myself, you know, I don't know anybody in this room. And in walks this guy who sits down next to me. And he, you know, I'm not thinking too much about it. We didn't talk. We didn't really converse at all. And then Sunday school's over and we go into church, right? Yeah. We're sitting there and we're sitting in the back. And I have this attitude because I don't even want to be there.
Yeah.
And here comes this same guy again. and he sits next to me again. The next Sunday, same thing's happening. And I'm thinking, what is going on with this guy? Like, he really has some nerve, just keeps following me around. And little did I know, he didn't even realize that I'm even there. So next thing you know, we are dating.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What was the first conversation? Why are you following me? Or?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. The first conversation was at a rodeo. This other guy that went to church with us had actually kept asking me out. And I did not want to date this guy at all. And I had decided I really liked Mark and thought I probably wanted to pursue that a little bit.
Okay.
And so he came along to the rodeo with another girl too that came. We just went as friends, all of us. And during that rodeo, he's talking to this other girl and he says, hey, like, who do you think in the church that I could ask out, and date?
Oh.
And I'm back behind him going.
Right.
And so she says, well, what about Tammy? And he's like, who? And I'm literally sitting right there. He's like, who? She said, Tammy, like, right here. And he was like, well, who else do you think I could date?
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was that was the first thing, and I'm like, oh, wow.
Right here.
Okay. Yeah. So I made a decision, being the ornery kid that I was, still not really loving Jesus at the time, that you are going to want to date me.
Oh, you're going to notice me.
Oh, you are going to notice me, and you're going to finally go out with me, and then I'm going to dump your sorry behind.
Oh.
That
It was one of those.
It was
Okay.
one of those. Well, it backfired. And so we started dating and fell in love and got married at 19.
Can we get a round of applause for
Yeah.
that? Congratulations. Yes. It
So
worked out.
we've been married 41 years now.
Wow, 41 years.
41 years.
And of course, we have to ask,
Yep.
what is the secret to 41 years?
Honestly, I always say the same thing. The secret, obviously, is, you got to have your foundation on Christ. Absolutely. But the main thing really is that don't give up. There are many times, right? I could have given up. Mark could have given up. We could have given up on each other. You get frustrated. Marriage isn't easy.
Marriage is tough.
You get frustrated and you could walk away. You could justify it. You can do, or you can stand up and fight for it. So when you just refuse to give up and you decide, nope, we're going to make this work. We made vows before God till death do us part. And both of us are still breathing. So we need to stick this thing out and make it work. And, God always, the word says that with every temptation, there's always a way of escape. So the temptation to escape marriage,
yes,
he's given us a way to escape that and stay married. If we just put our mind to it and we had to work at it. You just don't give up.
Yeah.
You just don't give up. You find a way. And I will say, too, the second thing I would say on that is there's a scripture that the Lord had me go to when I really wanted to give up at one point in our marriage, like everybody does, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to give up, and I heard the Lord tell me get into the love chapter and to read what love really is. And I got to the point that says love does not keep account of wrongs done to it. And I realized that I was doing that. I was keeping an account. Boy, I had a tab on every little thing.
Keeping score.
Yes, I was keeping score. And the Lord told me, you need to stop. You need to lay that down. You're not going to win with this. You need to lay it down. And if you really want to win in your marriage, and when I say that, I'm not talking about me win. I mean us win, right?
Together.
If we are really going to win for our marriage, that I had to stop doing that we both had to stop doing that. And so, yeah, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep account of wrongs done. So I don't bring up past. We just stopped doing that.
Wow. That's a very
And
powerful
it's
lesson.
very effective.
Thank you for
very
sharing that. I'm
effective.
sure a
You're
lot of people
welcome.
will benefit from that.
Yeah.
You know.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
All the scorekeepers.
Fight.
Right?
Yes.
You got to
Stop keeping score.
Throw your
Let it
chalkboard
go.
away. Throw your notebook.
If you really forgive, you forgive, right?
Yes.
Because that's what God does for us. He forgives us and he
Yes.
throws those memories away. He doesn't throw those back in our, back at us. It's the devil that throws them back to us.
Yeah, when we're angry.
Right? But it's not
Yes.
God that does that. So,
No.
and he is love. So if that's what he does, we need to be the same.
That's funny that you say that because I feel like my memory for whenever I was wronged gets sharper when I'm angry.
Oh, yeah.
When
yeah.
I'm at peace, I'm like,
Sure.
I don't know what happened. But once I'm angry, like, you did this. I
Yep.
pull out the list. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing. That helps a
No
lot.
problem.
So you go from Catoosa, Oklahoma. And how long are you there before you come back to California?
Oh, gosh. Well, we lived many, many different places with ministry. We were youth pastors for 13 years.
Oh, okay.
So we lived, everywhere from we were in ministry in Oklahoma and Cushing, Oklahoma, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. At Eastland, we started out in junior high ministry there.
Okay.
Then we were in Cushing, Oklahoma, and then we moved to Marietta, Georgia, and then we moved to Chicago or Tinley Park, Illinois.
Well traveled. Wow.
Yeah, so we lived a lot of different places. Alton, Illinois, Mark's hometown. We
he's
went
from
back
Illinois.
there.
Okay.
So we had several places that we were in ministry, but we came to Dinuba.
Dinuba.
Yeah, big Dinuba. Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, actually, we were on the road as evangelists
Okay.
for a year. The Lord told us that had instructed Mark that we were to resign as youth pastors, and he wanted to take us on the road. And we thought that we were just going to be evangelists, right, from that point. And really what he was doing is setting us up to pastor. He was setting us up for our final destination, right?
Yes.
And so we came to our pastor at the time, where it was the last place we were youth pastors in Bixby, Oklahoma. Our pastor had lived in Dinuba before and had friends that still lived there. And their pastor actually had cancer and was dying.
Oh.
And they said, would you be willing to go and fill in a couple of Sundays? And we were like, sure. So we came out here, and in coming out here, Mark met a pastor's wife who the pastor had died. Her husband had passed away, and she was trying to hold things together and just wanted to talk to him about, how do I go about finding a new pastor? Like, I don't even know what to do.
And this is for the Living Word.
Yes, for Living Word.
Who was the pastor that passed?
Chuck Ferris.
Chuck Ferris. Okay.
Pastor Chuck Ferris. Chuck and Judy Ferris. And Judy and her son, Greg, were still trying to hold the church together. And so they were just seeking counsel.
Yes.
And so as they wanted to know from Mark, look, you've been in ministry for years and years. Like, can we talk to you? And he's like, sure. You can call anytime,
But
talk
really,
anytime.
no thought.
Yeah,
that it would,
no thought. Oh, no.
I want to take
thought.
a step back for a second. I know you mentioned that early on you didn't want to be
Yes.
in church.
Yes.
And that you weren't really into God.
Yes.
And then we kind of skipped that you were a youth
Yeah,
pastor.
yeah,
So how
sorry.
did you decide to accept God into your heart?
I
and just
had
make it
a God encounter. I had a beautiful Jesus encounter. And really, it was prompted with Mark. He said to me, listen, like, you're doing something. Honestly, I had an alcohol issue.
Okay.
And that I had developed, early on. A lot of things had happened in my life. Some abuse
I love how
and
you
things
just,
like that.
and I know that Jim's noticing this as well. You guys are the second. We had Josh Cordero, another Christian, and we were talking about transparency, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was telling Jim, this is how the Christians do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? I go, they just drop it.
Yeah.
So he was
here it is.
he was in the middle of his speech, and he's like, yeah, and then, I had addiction, and it just very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I was telling Jim, that to me is like very admirable, because from a worldly approach, you don't say those things. You
Yeah, well, why hide it? Like, listen, I can help people
yes.
when they know that I've been where they've been.
It takes courage though
Right?
to just say
So,
that.
well,
So thank you for being
it's
courageous.
Truth. It's truth. It's where I've been.
Truth is scary.
So yeah, it is scary, but
yeah,
we all have that.
As the Christian,
we got to do it.
Yes, we
Listen,
gotta
he's
do
my
it.
peace. He's my peace, so I
Yes.
can walk in that, and I don't
Thank
have to
you.
worry about it.
That's
So,
inspiring.
Thank you.
So you were in addiction, and then
Yes, so I had this addiction, and it was quite strong, and Mark learned of it. And here I'm dating this guy who's called into ministry, right?
Yes.
And I am like not living like I'm going to be called into ministry in any way, shape, or form. And so he finally said to me one day, he said, I need to talk to you. He said, I really like you, but I am called to ministry and I've got to live my life a certain way. And I cannot be connected with this lifestyle and this behavior. I can't do this. And he said, it really stinks because I really like you, but I can't do this. I just can't be connected to this. You need to know where I'm going.
Yes.
And that just made me, honestly, that made me more mad at God because I felt like God was just telling me no. Like I felt like God was nowhere. Every answer was no for me if it had to do with God. And it was just really a misconception because a lot of times girls will take issues they have with their father and they will project that upon Father God.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the problems I had with my own father, I felt like Father God was the same way.
Yeah, I've got to
Okay?
trust this
Yes.
other figure.
Yes.
And I've already been let down.
Yes. And so I didn't trust
Yeah.
and I couldn't see the good.
It's hard.
And I wasn't giving God a chance. I mean, to be honest with you, I just wasn't, I was mad, just a mad kid.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even giving God a chance. So I got really upset and we laugh about it because I had a keychain, a big keychain with Mark's picture on it, you know,
okay.
and I was so mad.
Did he
when
give
he
that
told
to
me,
you?
Yeah, no, he gave me his picture and I put it in the
Oh, okay.
keychain frame. Yeah. And I was so mad. I threw my keys at a brick wall and it busted the key. I still have the keychain, but the keys busted off of it.
Okay.
So, you know, like I was just so mad. I was just an angry kid,
Yeah.
a lot of anger, and didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know how to get rid of it, and was raised in anger.
So this conversation was prior to marriage.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, like we were only 17
Okay.
still at this point. And I guess I was close to 18 at this point, and I was so mad. I remember peeling away in my car. I was so mad. And that night I went to a dark parking lot, no lights in the parking lot. And I sat out in the dark and I was just by myself. And I said, God, I'd never heard God's voice. I had heard God's voice one time.
Yes.
And didn't realize it. And I had looked across and I saw Mark standing across and I heard God say, that's who you'll marry. And I was like, whoa, what was that? Like, I didn't even know
Mark
God
was
could
there.
talk to you. Yeah. Yeah. So now this is months later, right? And we've been dating and now I'm mad and I'm sitting alone with God, right? In my car. And I start praying and I'm like, listen, I don't know if you're really who you say you are or who everybody else says you are. You know, I don't know if you even really exist. I don't know what to believe. But if you're who you are, I got a beef with you.
Wow.
And I need some answers.
Just said it.
Yep. I said, I got a beef with you and I need some answers. And I said, so I don't understand why you always take everything good away from me. I really like this guy, and because of you, I can't have him. Because he's telling me I have to give up alcohol for him. And distinctly, I'm telling you, as God is my witness, I'm telling you the truth. I felt like I heard an audible voice that felt like someone was sitting in the seat next to me. Wow. And I was like, I turn around, I look, and it's pitch dark, right? And I look, and there's nobody there, and I'm like looking in the back seat and thinking, what is happening right now? And I heard the voice of the Lord speak to me, and he said to me, who told you that I'm asking you to give this up?
Oh.
And I said, well, Mark said, you know, that he can't, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he said, well, let's talk about that a minute. And I said, okay. And the Lord, I mean, I'm telling you, this beautiful conversation with someone who didn't even believe. Okay,
Yeah.
I had been raised in church my entire life. I was born on a Sunday, and I was in Sunday the next church. I was the next Sunday in church. Raised my entire life in church, right? But someone who just didn't believe.
Yeah.
And I'm having this conversation with God, and the Lord says to me, what do you like so much about it? Why is this so hard for you to give up? What is it that why do you like it so much? And I said, I was very shy. I was a very shy person.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said, well, because I feel like, when I drink, I have courage. I have courage. That's why, like, I don't feel like I have courage. I just don't. And the Lord says to me, so when you drink, you feel, let's see, I said courage, and he said, you feel, I said, I feel brave. And he said, you feel courage, you feel strong. And I said, yeah.
Liquid courage, they
Yeah.
call it, right?
And he said, and I'm telling you, as God is my witness, the most disappointing voice you could ever imagine. He says to me, but I want to be that for you.
Oh.
And I was just like take my breath, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, don't talk to me like that,
You want to be something.
And so
for
I
me.
get defensive, right? And I'm like, well, but it also like I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of friends, but when I drink, I have a lot of friends. And he said, so it makes you feel accepted. And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, but I want to be that for you again. And I'm just like, oh, I can't take this voice. Like, it's killing me.
Yeah.
I can't take this voice.
It's a lot of risk in accepting that.
Yeah. And just thinking, wow, I never thought you want to be these things to me.
Yeah.
I never saw him that way. Right. So then we go through a whole list of things. Right. And I get through, he just keeps telling me the same thing, but I want to be this for you. I want to be this for you. And finally, I think, okay, I got one. I got you on this one.
All right, let's hear this one.
I like the taste of it.
Oh.
I like the taste of it. So a lot of people don't, but I did. So I'm like, I like the taste of it. So, so there. What are you going to do with that? Like, I like the taste of it.
And a 6-pack of O'Doul's
Yeah.
appeared on the...
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, and the next thing I hear is he says this, oh, taste and see that I am good.
Say that again.
Oh, taste and see that I am good. Because there's a scripture that says, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good.
I'm posting that one today.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
And I was just like, oh my God, like I can't get away from it. Like you've got something for everything, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that he really had something for everything.
No, and the
like
way
I had no excuses. Like, he wanted to be everything to me. He wanted to answer everything and be everything I literally needed. And I was rejecting him. And so he said this, he said, you can accept it's not that I'm trying to take things away from you.
Yeah.
He said, but you don't understand. What the enemy is giving you is a pseudo. He's giving you the false.
Yes.
For what I have that's real. That was another thing, is I said, I'm happy when I drink.
Yeah.
I'm happy. And he said, yeah, but when you stop in the next morning, are you still happy?
That's the downer.
I'm like, no. And he said, I want to be joy to you. Like joy, it lasts long past the next morning, you don't have a hangover from it.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, wow, like he was just everything. And so with him telling me this, I was just like, I'm done. Like I have nothing left.
So what was the reaction from Mark when you said, hey, I'm in?
Yeah. So, I told the Lord that first, right? I'm in. And listen to this. This is like really cool. Okay. Finally on this. I said to the Lord, I said, okay, if you're really all of this that you say you are, then this is what I want. I do want you. So I will give you my life and I will never turn away from you. I will give you my life. But I got one little problem. Remember I said I like the taste of this? I'm kind of hooked on this. So I'm going to need you to take that taste away from me. I need you to help me. Just take it away from me. I want you to like literally so that I know it's you helping me. Make me sick to even smell it. Just take the desire completely away. And I heard the Lord say, okay. And I'm telling you from that moment forward, I've got a nose like a hound dog, seriously. Like, and I can smell alcohol like far, far, far away. I can smell it. And I cannot handle the smell of it. It literally, it's like, that tastes so gross, or not taste, but it smells. It's like, it's not even appealing because it smells yuck. I know people are crazy about wine. Like seriously, like why? It smells like soured fruit. Yeah. Like it literally, he took every ounce of that away from me, and I have never craved it. Never drank it.
And the smell
never
makes
dealt
you
with it
sick?
since. Oh, even the smell.
You're describing my relationship with tequila.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, imagine that for
smell.
every bit of alcohol at all. Like I have no appeal for any of it at all. And that's what the Lord did. So I went back and told Mark and said, wow, this is what the Lord did. And I was just so excited about it. And he was like, yes, so we were back on.
Back in the game.
Yeah, back in the game. Yeah, and no regrets. Like, and I haven't turned my back on Christ at all. And he has been truly kept his word. And he has been all that he said he would be to me. Wow. He has been to me and more.
Wow. Okay, so
he's worth it. He's worth it.
You guys hear
tell
that?
you.
Now we're gonna confirm that even further now.
Yes.
So let's jump forward.
Okay.
You guys have Living Word.
Yes.
And you have your congregation. You're in Dinuba now, California.
Yep. Yes. And so back to Judy Ferris.
Yes.
And how we even got here. Sorry, we took a detour on that.
Good.
But so Judy was consulting with him on what do we do, and how do we find a new pastor. So he was telling her, like, you guys come together and pray. And, they just kept walking out. Oh, no. And one day Mark said to me, babe, we're in Oklahoma at this point, right? We're back home in Oklahoma.
Yeah. And
Judy's out here. And Mark says, babe, I think God's dealing with me about going and being a senior pastor. I said, the devil's a liar. Like, we are not going to be senior. I am not a senior pastor. Like, no, like youth pastor is one thing. Senior pastor, that scares the thunder out of me. I can't see it.
Yeah.
Like, no, not even interested. And he was like, I'm just telling you, I feel like that's what God's telling me. And I'm like, well, they got to know it too. And all this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of bucking the system a little bit. And all of a sudden, Judy calls one day and she says to Mark, she says, hey, listen, I know who our pastor is. And he said, really? That's awesome. He said, so that's great. She said, yeah, the Lord showed him his face to me. I know exactly who it is. And he's like, wow, so do I know him? Like, has he been there? Do I know him? She said, you know him really well. And he was like, really? Who is it? She said, you look at him in the mirror every day.
Wow.
And so he was like, wow, well, we got to pray about this, so he comes to me and he's like,
guess what?
Yeah, guess what? This is what was said. So we prayed about it. And through another long series of events, God confirmed it to both of us. And we knew this is it.
Wow. So
we came here in 96. Yeah.
Wow. You've been here 96.
Yeah, since 96.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So now I want to jump ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2020.
Yep.
I'm a teacher. I'm in school, and we start to hear about this thing at the time being called the coronavirus.
Yes.
It changed names as we progressed. And on Friday, March 13th, 2020, school shut down in the Central Valley. I remember that day distinctly. and they said, we're not coming back for about a week or two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We know it was longer than that.
Yes.
What was your experience with this introduction to COVID?
Really for us, when it really impacted us would have been when, and I can't remember the exact date. It was in March, but I can't remember the exact date. But it was whenever Fresno shut down.
Okay.
Whenever at midnight they were putting the shelter in place.
Yes.
For Fresno. Well, we're in Tulare County, so in Dinuba. So the next day, that was going to be a Wednesday.
Okay.
Whatever date it was going to be a Wednesday. The next day was a Thursday, and that was when they were going to, at midnight, now enforce it for Tulare County. So we had, here's another God thing, our son had moved from Tennessee. Our youngest son had moved from Tennessee back to the Valley.
You had family with you. How many children?
We have 3 sons.
3 sons. Okay.
3 sons. And so our youngest son, our oldest son lives here in the Valley.
Oh, is he in Dinuba?
He teaches in Dinuba.
Oh, okay.
But he lives in Visalia.
Okay.
And our other 2 sons both live in Tennessee. So our youngest son at the time had decided to move back. There had been some tragedy in his wife's family, and so they had decided to move back. And when they were coming back, we needed a media director at the church. We were in between staff members, and so he's very savvy with those things, and so we hired him. He said, would you consider me? I know I don't really have experience, but you know what I
can do.
Yeah, how my brain works, right?
Yes.
So we were like, yeah, we'll do it. So the first thing he said to us is, we need a presence online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was crazy.
This was right before 2020?
Yes, right before. So when he gets all done, finally gets us set up where we've got all of the equipment in place. We have everything ready to go to start live streaming. We just hadn't started it yet. And I'm telling you, it was the day everything was done.
Wow.
All of a sudden, we get this announcement and we hear Fresno shutting down tonight. And we're going to be shut down tomorrow. Wow. And so our son, Adam, he came to me and he said, Mom, what are we going to do? Like, they're telling us starting tomorrow, we can't even have church Sunday. Like, we're shut down. So we're like, oh my gosh, we got to figure out what we're doing. So Adam and I went into Mark's office and we sat down and we were talking about, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And Adam said, you guys, as of today, we're ready to live stream.
As of today.
Let's just live stream. We start live streaming.
So that means cameras set in front of the church. So you're running church like if there's an audience, but it's the cameras.
Yes.
And how many are present in front of the camera? It's you and Mark. And is the worship team still there? Or?
No, the worship team, no, because of shelter in place, nobody was allowed to even come in.
Okay.
So because we were family, because our son runs the cameras,
yes,
we were able to come in and Mark would preach, I would preach, we would go back and forth.
So you never missed a Sunday, right?
No, we never missed a Sunday. So we decide the next day, right, this is it. So now we're live streaming.
Okay.
And so that's how the whole live stream thing even happened for us, which was amazing. God's his provision was stellar. Like,
right on
it was
time.
just amazing. Yes. So unfortunately, in the middle of it, I was having some heart issues. My heart was doing some weird things. And I had a couple of episodes where I had passed out.
Oh, wow.
And it was just kind of weird. And so they had a heart monitor on me. So that day that we were talking in Mark's office about what are we going to do, we decided we're going to send everybody home. We're all sheltering in place, going ahead now, send everybody to the grocery store while they can, and we'll just take it from here and we'll deal with just us on the camera, and between us and Adam, and we won't have to worry about it.
What's funny is that when they said it was shut down in Rush, everybody said toilet paper. Like that was
Yeah, right. And everybody rushed to
Right?
get all the toilet paper they could
was the
possibly
first
get. Yeah.
toilet
Yeah.
paper.
The first thing through their minds. It's so funny. So I tell you the heart thing because that became significant because then we started working from home, right? We were all still working. We were just working from home.
Yeah.
And a couple of days into working from home, my heart monitor went off again. And the hospital called this time. It went off while we were meeting in Mark's office, and then it went off again at home. And they called me and said, you have to come and have emergency surgery immediately.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we
Like open heart surgery?
No. Long story short, I mean, really long story short, is I ended up in the hospital having a pacemaker put in. My heart was going on pause.
Yeah.
And so what it would do is...
This is during COVID?
Yes, during COVID, at the very beginning.
So like March?
Yes. So my heart would go on pause and I would literally flatline for like 5 to 8 seconds. And that's when I would pass out, or most of the time I didn't even fully pass out. I would just like zombie out. Like I'd just be sitting there and not present, but I didn't know what was going on until all of a sudden I'm back. My heart picked back up. So I go in the hospital to get this pacemaker. While I'm in the hospital, when I showed up, because things were no longer like they were because COVID was just starting.
Yes.
Right? They didn't have all the protocols in place. They didn't have everything, nailed down. None of us knew what was going on. It wasn't their fault. None of us knew what to do with this virus, right? So I go in to the hospital and they take me to the ER, and next to me, in the bed next to me, is a guy who has COVID.
Oh. So
And
this is the source of...
Yes. And so he has COVID pneumonia, and they take him up to his room, and 10 minutes later, they're wheeling me to my room down the same hallway into the same
area.
Yes, and into the same elevator, all of this. Well, I ended up with COVID. So I came home from surgery. No one knew I had it. I didn't know I had it. Came home and I proceeded to give it to all of my family, Mark included.
Yeah.
So now we go a week later, and now Mark has COVID, super bad. We both have it really bad. I'm trying to be a good patient, right? I'm trying to eat and drink and make sure that I'm still staying hydrated. He was so sick. He just kept saying, I can't eat, I can't drink. And I'm like, you have to, please, you have to. But he got so dehydrated, we had to call an ambulance. We were very, very concerned about him. So we called the ambulance, and he was taken then. And when he got to the hospital, you want me to just go from there?
Yes.
When he got to the hospital, we knew he was very dehydrated. And so we figured they would hydrate him and then send him home. So he gets there around 3:30 in the afternoon, something like that. And they say, yes, he's super dehydrated. So they're going to hydrate him and going to keep him for a couple of days. So we're like, okay. So that's the word I get. And then I don't hear anything else until like 10:30 at night. I finally, about 8 o'clock, Mark says, he sends me a text and says, they're finally taking me to a room. And so I was like, okay, good. Then I can rest, right?
Yeah.
About 10:30, my phone rang, and it was one of the doctors. And he said, Mrs. Wallace, I need to talk to you. This is very serious. We're having to put Mark in ICU. And he said, we need to put him on a ventilator, and I need your permission to do that. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
We went from dehydration
Yeah.
to ventilator.
Yeah, we're going to keep him for a couple of days. He's really dehydrated, he has pneumonia. He has COVID pneumonia, and he's very, very sick. And we have to put him on a ventilator. But we need your permission to do that. And of course, my head is spinning right at this point, and I'm super sick.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to think clearly while I am super sick as well. Truth of the matter, I already have a lung issue, so I should have gone to the hospital with him, but I wouldn't do that and both of us be in there. I just wasn't going to do that for our kids' sake. So I was like, it's me and you, God. Like, you got to help me. We got to keep, we got to keep trucking, got to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so, so the doctor's telling me this, and I'm like, whoa, like, and I'm trying to think about all the things that I'm hearing on the news.
Yeah, all the scary stuff.
Yeah, about people being put on a ventilator.
Yeah,
like
that's the
like
sentence.
They're not coming off. If they go on a ventilator, they're not coming off. And I'm like,
did you get the same impression, Jim, when you were that if the ventilator?
Yeah, for sure. That's why you heard so much that ventilators were short.
Yes.
They didn't have enough. Then companies were trying to make them as fast as they could. And
Yep.
Yeah.
So hearing all that, and now they say Mark's going to be on.
Yes.
What was your first initial thought?
No, this can't happen. No, this just can't happen. And so I asked the doctor, I said, we didn't talk about this. Like, Mark and I didn't talk about this. I don't know what he would say. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know well, I didn't know he was there in the room and he could hear. So he said, he said, well, what, he said, I'm here. And I said, baby, what do I do? And he said, I don't have a choice. And I said to the doctor, I said, well, talk to me and tell me, like, what are his chances if he's not on the ventilator? If we don't put him on a ventilator, what are his chances? And he said, none. He will not make it if we don't put him on a ventilator.
Oh, wow.
He will not make it. And I said, okay, well, what are the chances if we put him on a ventilator? And he said, slim, but slim is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just, cried. And I was like, babe, I don't, and he said, I don't have a choice. And I said, so you want me to say yes? And he said, we don't have a choice. I said, okay, then put him on the ventilator. And I was just so stunned and cried, like, because I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, no. No one's ever ready for that.
Like, we hadn't talked about that.
It's a
Like, that
life
was
or death
not in our
situation.
minds. Yeah, it was just totally thinking dehydration.
Yeah.
And never thought about that. That was so scary. But I was like, okay, God, now, here's where we are. So we had to make a rational decision. And if they say he's not going to make it, then I didn't have a choice. So, Lord, now you have to help me get him off this thing. You know, you have to heal his lungs and, let's do what we got to do. So he was on the ventilator. And, of course, then they have to sedate him.
Yeah.
So now I can't see him.
Was this like a medically induced coma?
Yes, medically induced coma. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes. Because it's very painful and they needed him not to fight it.
Yeah.
So because of the pain, the natural thing would be to pull at the tubes. And a lot of people were dying because unless they're restrained, they're pulling their own tubes out because it's so painful.
Oh, man.
So they sedate him and just put him out. So I'm hearing from the doctor and from the nurses, the hospital. I'm hearing from them every day. They were calling me a couple of times a day and allowing me to call and check on him. But I can't talk to him, because he's in a coma. So I can't talk to him. I can't go see him. And listen, you got to think about the fact that for a lot of years now, Mark and I work together. We're together 24/7, so to be completely apart like that was really, really difficult, So, and no way to go see him. Like, I was so sick, there was no way I could have anyway, but man, I would have made a way. Like if they would have let me up there, but they wouldn't let me come. So, so I'm just, I'm trying to get these updates, right? So his FiO2 levels and his PEEP levels. I mean, there's all these different levels that I'm
you
having to
learned
keep
about.
track of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank God, one of my daughter-in-laws, our middle son, Kyle's wife, Casey, was an RN for several years. And so she had just stepped back to do real estate with him to start their own
Company.
empire. Yes. So when she stepped back, I called her though, and I said, Casey, honey, I need you, like, help me with
Translate
all of
all
the,
of this.
yes, like they're talking stuff that I don't understand. And would you be on the phone with me? Like, can I ask them, can I put you on the call with me for every call with the doctor? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. So she was a godsend. I could not have done it honestly without Casey. She was really a godsend. She helped me keep it all straight.
And so, in total, from the day he checked in,
Yes,
till the end of the COVID experience, how many days are we talking?
28.
28
days until he came home. He was on the ventilator for 14 days. He was in a coma for 10 of those days. He was awake, but still on the ventilator for 4 days.
Yeah.
And then in the hospital he was in ICU for a total of 20 of those days, and then transitioned to a step down room for the last 4 days before coming home.
And all of this, the rest of us, we followed on social media.
Yes.
You were updating, obviously, the concerned individuals, the family, the congregation, all of Mark's friends. And that's started to grow into something bigger. How did that happen?
Okay, so I was trying to keep my cards close to my chest, right?
Yeah.
Like, we kept it really family only, and then the board at the church, right? Our board, I kept them updated. They always knew what was happening. But I made sure that it was really only family that knew the magnitude of what was going on.
Yeah.
Simply because, honestly, not everybody can handle that kind of news.
Yeah.
Especially when they're watching the news. We were all at home.
We were so scared.
You had the news on all day long, 20, all kinds of hours a day.
It was all
right?
bad news.
And there was nothing good on it. And everybody was dying. So, like, I felt like if I got on there and told everybody, Mark's on a ventilator, he's in the hospital, on a ventilator, I felt like there would be so many people that would lose hope and just already have him in a grave.
Well, even the little that you did share, I have to be full disclosure, I was anticipating the announcement of his passing.
A lot of people.
That's
were.
where I was.
But I carefully crafted my words, honestly, to make it to try to minimize that as much as I could on my posts. I didn't post anything the first day. I think the first time I posted was on the 10th because I was having a lot of people call my house, text me or whatever and say, hey, I saw an ambulance. We live in Dinuba.
Yeah.
It's not that big,
Everybody
right? So
knows.
everybody knows that the word gets around. So
Jim's smiling because he's from Cutler. He knows.
yeah. So everybody knows, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll just put a post out. Yes, everybody saw. Yes, he did go to the hospital. Just keep praying for him. That's what we need we need your prayers. And that's basically all I said, at first is, come on, guys, like, let's pray.
But you could feel that energy.
Yeah.
It's like I've been in other experiences where something's happened.
Yes.
And we try to gather in prayer.
Yes.
You can feel an energy like, wow, there's a lot of positive prayer going towards this cause or this issue. And I felt that with Mark.
Now, I can tell you that there was a scripture the Lord gave me the next day on the 10th, right? Okay. He went in on the 9th.
Yes.
And on the 10th, I was in the Word. I'm trying to encourage myself, right? Because my husband is on a ventilator.
Yeah.
And I have the same news everybody else had, right? So, I'm anointed to preach it, but I'm not anointed to live it any more than you are, right? So
I think that's the misconception.
Yeah,
Is that
it
if you
is.
preach, it's like, oh, they,
yeah,
things
right?
must be easier for them.
No, we got to call, but we got to walk it out just like you do. So the thing is I'm in prayer and I'm asking the Lord, Lord, I need a word to stand on. I need a word to stand on. And this is where the Lord directed me. He sent me to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 17. And I find it very interesting because we talked about it later. A significant phone call that I got from the doctor was on 4:17.
Oh, okay.
And this is 2 Timothy 4:17.
Wow.
And I got this on the 10th. This is when the Lord gave this to me. But the Lord stood by me and gave me strength so that I might preach the good news in its entirety for all the Gentiles to hear. And he rescued me from certain death.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, Lord. And I felt like the Lord kept telling me, insert Mark's name, as if he is either speaking this himself or you're speaking this over him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, but the Lord stood by Mark Wallace and gave him strength so that by the Lord's might, he might preach the good news in its entirety for all people to hear, right? Oh. And that the Lord rescued Mark Wallace from certain death.
Amen.
So I stood on that, right?
Yes.
I just kept standing on that. So now fast forward, right, to the 17th. Now it's the 17th, and we've had very rocky days.
Yes.
His levels are not good. Things are not getting better. I really believed, it was Easter weekend, right, when he went in. And I thought, okay, the Lord, you raised up, God, you raised up Jesus in 3 days. You're going to raise up my husband in 3 days. And I was just standing on it, right? He's coming out of this thing on Easter. And Easter came and Easter went. And Mark's levels were declining, not getting better. And so I'm like, but I'm going to keep standing on this word. Yeah. Lord, you said, you gave him strength that he's going to preach and that you rescued him from certain death. And I know we're looking at certain death here, Father, but you said you're going to rescue him. So I'm still standing on this. You might have not done it in my time frame, right? But you're still going to do this.
Not in our time.
Yeah. So I still had this word, right? So I'm just standing on it. I'm still just believing and standing on it. So the 17th comes now. And that morning, I get a text from one of our girls, one of my girls at church, who is like one of the girls that sits under me, right?
Yeah.
And her name is Rosemary. And Rosemary, that girl knows how to pray. And she hears from God, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And the Lord gives her visions, and I can always count on them being very accurate. So she sends me a text at 8:00 on 4/17. She sends me a text, and she says, Mama Tam, I got to tell you, I just had a vision, and I got to tell you, when I was in prayer for Pastor Mark, I had this vision. Now, she does not know he's on a ventilator. She knows he's in the hospital, but she does not know he's on a ventilator. And she doesn't know the severity of it.
Yeah.
And in her vision, basically, she saw an angel standing in Mark's room, standing at his side, and she could see all of these machines all around Mark. She could see Mark on a ventilator. She could see him on his face, which that was another thing, is they had told me for 16 hours a day, we're going to have to keep him face down. Wow. And I had told that to no one. My family knew, but that was it. She knew
the ventilator. She knew he was face down.
Yes. And she said, I see an angel in the room making declarations. And as this angel is making declarations, they're being pinned on the walls and on the floor because he's looking down. And so they weren't on the ceiling; they were on the floor.
So, where's
right? Because he's
vision.
Yeah. So I thought that's so cool how God did that. It's so cool to show her that. And it was all declarations of that he would live and not die. All of these declarations, right, of living, and that he was going to rescue him, and all the things that the Lord had been speaking to me, which nobody knew. She's hearing the same thing. This angel making these declarations. And so they're being pinned in gold, she said, on the walls and on the floor.
Yeah.
And on the bed sheets
Uh-huh.
and on the machines. All of these words are being written. And there is a book beside him where there's words written in blue, like fire. Words are being written. And she said, and in this book is all of the experiences that God is taking him through during this time.
Okay.
And they're words that will need to come back to us. And she said, but I hear it. And I'm telling you, there's an angel in his room that's making these declarations over him that he's going to live and not die.
Wow.
And so I'm like, yes, there's my second confirmation, right? God's telling me, and now I have this confirmation. Well, that was at 8:00 in the morning. Now fast forward to 3 p.m. I mean, I'm flying high, right? I got this incredible word, and I'm like, yes, God, let's do it. Let's do it. And the phone rings at 3:00, and it's my phone call from the doctor, my daily phone call from the doctor.
Yeah.
And he says, Mrs. Wallace, I need you to put the entirety of the family, if you could gather them onto the phone, please.
Oh.
He said, I need to talk to everyone. And I'm like, okay. And he said, we need to talk. So I'm calling everybody. I've got all of the kids, all 3 of the boys, my daughter-in-laws, we're all on the phone. And he says, okay, it's time to get down to the, brass tacks on this. And he said, you all need to understand he's not going to make it.
Oh, wow. The doctor says this.
He says he's not going to make it. You need to start making preparations. He said, go ahead and you can call, to start making, preparations at a funeral home, things like that.
Wow.
And he said, because he's not going to make it. And I said, whoa, hold up. My boys are all on the phone, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hold up. And he said, no, I'm serious. Like, this is bad. And I said, well, like, what are you talking about? Like, and he said, it's really turned and it's really bad. And I said, like, what are we talking about here? And he said, he may have 24 hours. He said, we might see that stretch to 48, but more like he's not going to make it even the next 24 hours. And you just need to be aware of that. And you need to understand this is where we're at and accept that. And I said, well, I understand what you're saying. And I said, but tell me what you're basing this on. Why do you say this? Why are you calling me all of a sudden and telling me this? And he said, well, he has major organ failure. His kidneys are not working. His liver is not working. He said his kidneys have not worked for over 24 hours. He said he can't live this way.
So it's basically the machine at this point.
He said all the poisons are backing up into his system. He's not passing anything. His lungs are filling up totally with fluid. His liver is not cleansing. It's totally stopped working. And he said, 4 things. It was his kidneys had stopped working. His liver had stopped working. His lungs were so full that he said he's drowning in his own poisons. He said, and if none of that killed him, he said his heart is overworking so hard to compensate for all of these other things that are not working that it can't last another 24 hours. Yeah. It will quit. So he's in major organ failure and there's no way he's going to make it.
Yeah.
And my boys, I can hear them start to cry on the other end. Now, these are grown men, right? Yeah. And they're, starting to cry on the other end. And I said, okay, doctor, let me ask you a question. And he said, okay. And I said, I need you to tell me what has to happen for him to come off the ventilator. And he goes, Mrs. Wallace, that's what I'm trying to tell you. He's not coming off the ventilator. There's no way possible for him to come off this ventilator. I said, I know I heard you. but I need for you to just appease me and tell me what has to happen for him to come off the ventilator. Mrs. Wallace, I can't give you false hope. I can't do this to you. You don't understand. It's not going to happen. And I said, okay. He said, you don't understand. You're not hearing me. I said, okay, so that you understand, I know what you're saying. Let me tell you what you have said.
Yeah.
You have said, you know, his kidneys haven't worked in 24 hours. I just recited the whole thing back to him.
Yeah.
And I said, I heard everything that you said. And I said, but I'm asking you to hear me now. I'm just asking you to dream with me for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's say all of a sudden things started turning around. What would it have to be to turn around?
What would that look like?
What would it look like? Just describe that to me. Tell me what would have to happen for him to come off that ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, okay, first his kidneys would have to start working. They're just not producing anything for over 24 hours. I said, okay. And I'm just writing it all down and making my list.
Yeah.
He said, and then his liver would have to start functioning. I said, okay. What else? Well, his lungs, we would have to be able to drain the fluid from his lungs. Okay. Then what else has to happen? Okay. And then he's got to, you know, his levels have to level out. Like they have to start functioning. He's got to be able to be awake. He's got to be able to, you know, come off the ventilator. And I said, okay. And he said, but you do understand that's not going to happen. And you guys need to talk as a family and you need to figure out what arrangements you want to make. And,
Yeah.
you know, you guys
Be
can go
ready.
ahead and start making those arrangements. And I said, okay, thank you. And I said, call me later. And so we hung up. And my middle son, Kyle, oh, man, like I can hear his voice still today. He, you know, this is a young man that was in his, let's see, he's 36 now. He just turned 36. So
It's about
this was 4
32.
years ago. So he's like 32,
Yeah.
right? And he is saying to me like he's a 5-year-old little boy, Mom, Dad's not going to live, is he? Dad's going to die. Dad's going to die. And I said, no, son, your dad's not going to die. Just stop. Your dad's not going to die. And he said, Mom, you can be honest with us. Like you can be real. Like you don't have to try to hold steady for us.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be strong for us.
Yeah.
Like you can,
Give
it's
it to
okay.
us straight.
And I said, babe, I'm not being strong for you. I'm telling you, I have a word from God and I know your dad is going to live. He is not going to die. So this isn't about being strong for you kids.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, your dad is going to live and he's not going to die. And you can take that to the bank. I'm telling you, I know I've heard the Lord. I've heard God speak to me and he's not going to go back on his word. And so he was like, okay, Mom, okay. And so we all hung up. And when we all hung up, I took that list that I had written and I literally looked in front of me and kind of looked up and in front of me. And I shoved the list up like this. And I said, here you go, Lord.
It's in your hands.
This list is not mine. This one's for you. I can't do anything about any of this. Only you can. You're the one with the word on the line. You told me. So this is your list. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do with it. And I walked out of the room. Never shed a tear. Never cried. Never let it sway me. I was confident. I'm telling you, I had complete faith in God. Complete faith in God in this.
Wow.
So, yeah. So then it was 3 days later. Mark wakes up out of the coma.
Wow.
He wakes up. And I believe it was 3 days later that he woke up. And when he did, they had called me that morning and said, you're not going to believe this. Well, okay. So these are the 3 days leading up to that morning.
Yeah.
Okay. So one morning I get a call. You're not going to believe what just happened. And I said, what just happened? They said, we drained 4 liters of fluid off of him in the night. He hasn't produced anything in days. We just drained 4 liters. Now think about that. That's like 2 liters of soda,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I was
Think
thinking.
about
So,
that.
Yeah.
Like that's
A
how much
lot of
fluid all of
fluid.
a sudden overnight that drained off of him.
Wow.
And they said his kidneys are working, and we drained all of this off of his lungs, and his kidneys are working. He's producing urine. And I'm like, that is amazing. They said the doctor is like freaking out and said, we're going to give him a diuretic, see if we can drain more. And so after that 4 liters, they drained another 2.5 liters off of him.
This is clearing his lungs.
Clearing his lungs,
For
which
breathing.
check. Kidneys working. Check. All of a sudden they call me. His liver, we tested his liver and the enzymes are up. His liver's working again. Check. I'm just looking at my list and I'm literally checking it one day at a time, right?
Yeah.
And so then his kidneys are working, his liver's working. They've drained all of this fluid off of his lungs.
Yeah.
And now he wakes up.
And they call you.
Yes. So they wake up. He wakes up and they called me and they're like, he's awake. And I'm like, what? Like, he's awake. We just can't believe it. He's awake. And I'm like, this is amazing. They don't even know why he's even alive still this 3 days
Yeah.
later. He was supposed to die 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Right. And all
That's
of
where
this
I
is
was at
happening one day
on
at
my
a time.
social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah. So
And
it was
then-
amazing.
Yeah. And then
And
you
he
guys
didn't
are
die.
posting like he's coming
Yeah.
home. I said, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So it was still a journey. There was still a journey after he was awake. But what's really crazy, and he's amazing at telling the story, because part of that, like all up until now, right, he's not been awake. So I'm the only one that has the record of the story of what's been going on.
Yeah.
Levels were outrageous and everything. But once he woke up, he remembers everything. Which the doctors, we've talked to the doctors, right, later, and they're like, how do you remember this? We literally gave you medication in, your IV to make you not remember this trauma. How do you know this? And he's like, I don't know. I just know. I can describe the whole thing. And he described everything. So he's brilliant at telling the story of once he woke up.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
we're going to take a break right there. And we want to hear from Mark.
Yeah, the rest of the story.
What it was like after waking up.
Yep.
Thank you for your strength. Thank you for
Yeah.
your guidance. You were
Thank the
solid
Lord
as a
for
rock.
his.
Thank
It's
the
his
Lord.
promises, we stand on his promises. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, when you're in a crisis like that, you have to get in the word and get a word. Get a word from God and stand on it. Stand on it and believe and really hear him. Because sometimes I think too, there's a difference. Sometimes we want to get in the word and we take some of the word and we don't really ask God, is this a word for me?
Yeah.
And we want to just assume.
But you owned it.
But
You
God
said
told
it,
me
it's
this is
mine.
it. This is it. I'm
You
telling
claimed
you,
it.
insert his name.
Yes.
So I did. And yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Tammy,
Yeah, you're
for
welcome.
sharing that. We're going to come back here in a couple of minutes, and we're going to hear from the man himself as he rises from prayer and faith.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we're back with RobLive, and I have with me here a book, and I love the title, I'm Not Done. Prophetic words from the man that sits next to me here. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Wallace.
Hey, thanks.
We'll put your book there for you.
Yeah.
Not done. Here you are.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Tammy, wow. She just told an amazing story about how you had your COVID experience, and miraculously, after 28 days, 14 of which were on a ventilator, which
Yeah.
many of us associate with the end of the road for most,
Yeah.
you slowly started to make a comeback. Now, we've heard her side of it, and she was awake and conscious and suffering from COVID
Right.
at the same time going all this. We want to hear your experience with all of this.
Yeah. So thanks for having us on.
Oh, of
And,
course, it's an amazing story.
Really
It needs to be
appreciate
heard.
it. Yeah, it's when I went into the excuse me, to the hospital on April the 9th. I remember right up to the point that I was talking to her over the phone and said, "Look, we don't have a choice," and they put me out, and I have no memory of that 10 days that I was in the coma, except two things that I remembered being in that coma. One was that they were icing me down.
Oh,
And
to
I
cool
re-
your body.
Yeah, even though I was in a coma, I was aware that they were putting ice on my left side, and I just remember it felt so good. and I'm in total coma,
Yeah.
but I distinctly remember that.
The cool down.
And it was because my temperatures were 103 plus, and they had to cool my body down.
Yeah.
And then I remembered one other moment where I was on my face on the vent just briefly. I mean, it was I don't know how long, but it was just I have that vivid memory of that. But for that 10 days, I was out. I was out. I was totally unconscious. I had no awareness of anything. They make fun of me and say, "You were just taking a nap." And it was a deep
Yes.
coma that I was in.
So you pointed something out to me off camera earlier, and you said that there was the ventilator had a tube.
Yeah.
And because you were face down, this tube was going across your cheek.
Yeah, they had put me on the vent, and because they tell me, and obviously I can see it now, but they put me in the prone position. The reason they put you face down when you're on the ventilator is because it helps you breathe better.
Okay.
And so I was face down for 14 hours at a time. And then they would turn me back over on my back for a couple of hours, and then back to 14 hours straight. So with that,
Yeah.
I hate sleeping on my stomach. I can't do it. But subconsciously, obviously I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And when I'm face down, I guess my natural reaction was to turn my head to the side, and the tubes that were coming out of my mouth bore a hole in my cheek, and
can
it was
see
a
that,
deep,
yeah.
deep crevice, and it created the scar that I now share the scar, but those are my battle scars, man.
Battle scars.
And we
Battle
won.
scars.
and
Yeah.
so,
The scars have a different meaning when they lead to victory.
That's right. No pain, just memory of where we've been.
Wow. So let's fast forward a little bit to you're now waking up.
Yeah, it was the scariest thing ever, and I talk about this in the
your
book, detail laid out on the play-by-play, and people have said that when they read the book, they can't hardly put it down. They say, first of all, two things: have a box of tissues because you're going to need it, because we're very, very descriptive and lay that out in what we're feeling.
Yeah.
And secondly, they say don't start reading at night because you'll go till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. You won't be able
Binge
to
like it's a page
so,
turner.
Yeah, it's a binge. And so anyway, that's regarding the book. But when I woke up, I distinctly remember when I woke up, I'm looking around, and dude, it felt like one of the old Twilight Zone movies. I mean, like, I go to sleep and I'm aware of, doctors and this and that. Well, when I wake up, the people in the room have all this Darth Vader stuff. I mean, they got these hoods and vents, and they're,
hazmat suits.
Yeah, it's fully hazmat. They're covered head to toe. And I'm laying there and my nose is itching. And I reach up to scratch my nose. And when I do, I realize I'm tied to the bed.
Wow.
They had my arms tied, my feet tied, and I looked down, and all I had on was a loincloth. They had put a cloth over me, and that was it. I was completely naked, laying there, looking around, not knowing where I was, what was going on. I was disoriented. I wanted my family. I wanted somebody that I could see, and all I see is these people coming in. And the first guy that came in when I was trying to stretch and scratch my nose, he said, "Stop it. Do you just want to die?" And I mean, he was really harsh, but you got to understand, they were bringing nurses in from around the country to cover this. So I don't even know who that was. It was nobody at that hospital. Yeah. And just harsh. And I can't speak because I got this tube down my throat, and I'm hurting, and I'm in tremendous pain, and I'm not supposed to be awake because they still had me sedated.
Yeah.
So I'm coming off of the sedation almost supernaturally. Wow. And that's what I woke up to. It was the scariest moment of my life because I didn't know where I was, what was happening, what have they done to me?
Yeah.
And that's the condition.
So then you're awake. Obviously, you get to a point where you can actually speak and talk to family. What were your first words to Tammy?
Well, my first words were, "I'm not done."
Oh,
right,
yeah,
which
book.
is the
I'm
name
not
of my
done.
book. That was the first words out of my mouth that I could physically speak. But if you back up, when I woke up from the coma, I was still 3 days from them taking the tubes out and coming off the vent.
Okay.
And so during that 3 days, I was awake, I was alert, I was aware of everything going on in the room, and the pain was excruciating. And I had some real supernatural things going on in the room. Now, remember, I didn't know anything that had been going on outside.
Yeah.
This is my world. I woke up and here I am. And so my experiences that I was going through, I had no idea that some of this was part of this girl's vision that Tammy shared, and where the angel was in the room. And so I'm laying there, and it's the middle of the night, and I hear this voice, and it's yelling. I mean, it felt like the room was shaking, man. It was like being in the next room.
Yeah.
But there's no insulation. Excuse me. And this voice is just reverberating and shaking the whole room. And it's yelling at the top of this guy's lungs. And I'm hearing, "You're going to live and not die. With long life, I'll satisfy you. You'll preach my word," and on and on and on. And it's all this encouragement. But I'm thinking to myself, man, for some reason, I equated that there was a doctor in the next room that was excited about his faith, and he's preaching to all these people. I didn't know where I was or what it was, but there was nobody in the room. And a nurse comes in, and I'm looking, and all this voice is going on, and I'm looking up at her, and like,
she's not reacting.
No. She's oblivious to all this. And she's just going on and checking me out and, and doing what she's doing with the machines and everything. And I'm looking up at her like, "Can't you hear that? What's going on here? And so this goes on. She leaves the room. It goes on all night long. Second night, all night long. And through the day, I could hear this voice. And it was over and over and over again, to the point I'm laying there and I'm thinking to myself, man, this doctor has got to understand he's here to do medical things. He's not here to preach and do all this stuff. I got to talk to this guy, right? And tell him, dude, I appreciate your faith, but you got to simmer down. You're going to freak everybody out.
Yeah.
And so that's my reality. And in between all the pain and everything, and I'd go out for a while, and when I would wake up again, this voice was
just cheering you on.
And this by the second day, and the doctor came in, and out of nowhere, he said, I was in such pain, and he said, you ready to come off that thing? We're going to extubate you. And I said, I looked up and I shook my head. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm ready. And he said, let's do this. I found out later that it was nip and tuck. Nobody in the hospital in this whole region had come off the vent and lived.
Yeah.
Nobody.
That's
I'm
what
the
I believe
only
to be true.
one at
Oh
that
my
time.
God.
Now, later on, others lived.
you were the pioneer.
But at this point, I was it, man. And so by this time, I had been on the vent for 14 days. I'd had all the supernatural experience that I thought was just a doctor.
Yeah.
And some other things that God had done while I was in there. And just supernaturally things. Tammy had sent a playlist of worship music, and she got a word from somebody that said, look, put this on replay in his room next to his bed. And it was worship. And they told me later that doctors and nurses and therapists would come into my room because they couldn't escape death. Everywhere they went, people were dying. I mean, we're in the heart of COVID.
And you were life.
And they would come into my room. They would not go down for their break, down to the break room or the lunchroom. They would come to my room because there was peace in this room.
Wow.
And they couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
They were like blown away by this, but they were like mentally and emotionally spent because death was everywhere. And they described it later to me and saying we would go in there and there was just this peace. And some of the atmosphere was because of this worship music. And it was this playlist. And it was like almost 2 hours long because on that, there was also one of my sermons on vision and living and fulfilling God's purpose in your life. And so she had recorded that, sent that into the hospital, and this playing over and over and over, and sent specific instructions. So while she's at home praying and believing,
Yeah.
she's sending this all while I'm in this coma. And this is playing nonstop. And instructions, if it stops, you get it started again.
Get it going again.
Nonstop. And
Good
so
job,
this
Tammy.
is going on in my room, man. I mean, she was a warrior. In fact, one of the chapters talks about Mrs. Braveheart.
Mrs.
My
I
last
like that.
my last name is Wallace, and we've studied it out. And William Wallace is my 17 times great-grandfather. Yeah, yeah. Went to Scotland, did this whole thing.
Connected the Braveheart.
So I wrote the chapter that she's Mrs. Braveheart because of the way she battled and fought and believed. I just want to say this one thing. She talked a lot about faith. And what faith really is believing what God says about a situation more than everything that's you're seeing. Faith doesn't see through the natural eyes. In the natural, I was dead. In fact, I died twice while I was there in the hospital. And I felt myself leaving my body and hovering up over. And I never left the room, but I knew this is it. I'm going.
Hovering above.
Yeah. Hovering above. I could physically
Witness.
see myself
Yeah.
laying there in the bed, see people around me. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm
This
going
is
to
it.
die. And then out of nowhere, the second time, I was like, no, I'm not dying. And something just up out of my spirit. It wasn't verbal because I was still in the vent.
Yeah.
And so I hear this up out of me is no. And then I came back into my body and I said to myself, I'm not done. God's
I'm
not done with me. And that was the nature of all this. So I got all this atmosphere going on and people are coming as their only place of refuge
Yes.
in the hospital. Doctors. We had one doctor that was Hindu and he calls me the miracle man. It's still to this day.
Yeah.
At
I
Kaiser,
agree.
he walks in and he tells everybody, we need, all during COVID, we need another miracle man. We need to see this,
It helped
And
them.
yeah,
right? Just-
yeah, it did. So when I wake up and I'm going through all this and he says, are you ready to come off that thing? He takes me off the ventilator. And remember, they had given me medication to help me forget all of this. I was supposed to have no memory. But later on, I went back to the hospital and visited them and gave them copies of my book and everything and thanked them, for all their hard work and everything that they did and their sacrifices.
This was Kaiser and Fresno?
Yeah, and Kaiser and Fresno. And when I gave them the book, doctors started asking me questions. I said, it's good to actually meet you. You were my doctor. And the doctor that said, we're going to take you off the vent, he said, tell me about do you have any memory? And I said, well, yeah, when I went off the vent, you were there, you were there, you were there. And there was another guy that was in there. And they're like, how do you remember that? Oh, no, I just do, right?
Just do.
And so there was so much going on supernaturally that God was doing in me
Undeniable.
that nobody could deny that this was an absolute miracle in front of their eyes. They're the ones that said he's going to die in 24 to 48 hours. And so you fast forward and they had taken me off the vent and now I could speak. And I hear the voice again the next night. This guy is just, and I'm
Just
frustrated.
cheering you on.
I'm like, man, I cannot sleep. This guy needs to shut up. And this nurse comes in. And I said to her, I said, who is that? And she said, who's who? It's the middle of the night. And I said, you don't hear that? She said, no, there's nothing, Mr. Wallace. It's the medication. You're hallucinating.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, are you real? And she laughed and she said, well, yeah. And I said, and you don't hear that? She said, I don't hear anything because it's total silence. It's the middle of the night.
Wow.
The beeping of this machine is the only thing going on. And I said, I'm telling you. She said, well, what's going on? And so I began to tell her
The
what he was
cheering and the shouting
prophesying and saying and declaring over me. And she just shakes her head and goes out. And so the next day, I was actually able to talk to my wife for the first time. And sorry, I get a little teary-eyed because it was so lonely,
Yeah.
And so I talked to Tammy. And while I'm telling her this, I said, man, there's this doctor that is yelling. What's he saying? And I began to describe, and she said, Mark, that's not a doctor. She said, that was an angel. And she reads me the text that she got. And I'm just laying there in the bed going, wow, I can't believe this.
Clear as day, you heard
This is exactly what Rosemary had seen in the vision.
Yeah.
And this going on, and I'm on the vent while this is happening. And so I began to tell her, and that's how I knew it was an angel. I couldn't see him,
Yeah.
but I could hear every word, and it was aggravating. Here I'm trying to rest and trying to sleep, and it's so thundering that I couldn't. And it was literally God giving me a glimpse. See, there's this realm that's going on all around us.
Spiritual realm.
There's a spiritual realm. There are angels in this room right now. There is heaven is at work. There are demonic forces in the earth. And that reality of that spirit realm is there whether we see it or not. And so these people that say, my house is haunted, I believe that. I believe that when they say that, because they get a glimpse into the realm of the spirit, and they see evil spirits, and they hear them. Yes. And I was able to get a glimpse into the spirit realm of what God was doing in the room.
Yes.
And the angel that had been assigned to my room, he was assigned to stand there
and just keep
doing warfare.
Yeah.
So I would live and not die. And so it was magnificent. And
so I wanted to tell you this for a long time because I followed your story, but I never got to meet you in person. And thank you, Tammy, for chronicling everything. But this was my vision when I heard that you were going home. I envisioned you in your car, and on that drive home, recounting everything that you had just gone through.
Yeah.
It was like the end of a journey. So I've always wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on that drive home?
Of course, Tammy was driving. They wheeled me down through the corridor and out the elevator. And we have pictures of this online, and you can see it on news.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all over the news.
Yeah.
Because I was the only one that went home.
Yeah.
And they were telling my story. And when I came off the elevator in the wheelchair and they're wheeling me down, there was this parade of people cheering and celebrating. I don't know who was watching over the patients, because every nurse, every doctor, everybody was there.
They needed
celebrating and clapping and cheering and patting me on the shoulder. And I'm going, all I did was wake up, right? It wasn't me anything, but it was overwhelming. And we thanked everybody. My wife spoke to everyone there, and then they wheeled me over. I was so frail, man. I had lost, I can't even remember, something like 25 or 30 pounds in that 30 days. And I was so frail. And they had to put me in the car. I got in the car my wife was driving, and it was quiet. And I just reached over and I held her hand. And tears. I'm alive, man. You know? And she's telling me all the stuff that was going on that I didn't know behind the scenes. And of course, she knew, I didn't know it, but she knew that people had gathered at the church to welcome me home. And so we're driving along, and we're just, there wasn't a lot of fanfare. There wasn't a lot of talking. It was just the silence of being able to process everything that had happened, and just some I love yous, some
rejoice,
just some celebration that we were together again. Because remember, we hadn't seen each other for 28 days.
Yes.
And this two people that had been married all these years, we now have celebrated 41 years. So I guess at that time it was like 36, 37 years. And we'd never been apart like this. And so 28 days is a long time. And one time, I got to tell you this, one time that I was in the hospital, I was in such pain one night. I'd come off the vent, but I thought I wasn't going to make it. And I could physically feel myself running my fingers through my wife's hair and just brushing her hair back, which I, not to tell too much, but yeah. And it was so comforting to me. And on the way home, I reached across and did that.
Wow.
And she didn't understand or know where it was, because later is when we discussed all this. So,
Full circle.
yeah, it was amazing though. And so the ride home, as I recall, was pretty quiet, but just interrupted here and there by "I love yous." I'm so glad, that you're home and you made it. We made it. And I found out later that 20,000 people, because of my wife's post, had been praying that we know of.
Yeah.
That we know
I'm sure
of.
there's many more.
Yeah. There were 43 states and 22 countries. I have a map in my office of all the little stick pins of where people were when they were praying. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't look up at that map and recall this. And thank God that I'm not done. I'm still here.
So in conclusion, you can state with full authority that prayer is real.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Prayer makes all the difference. And I could go in, and I do in the book, to some of the things about prayer that were activated during this time and how the miracle took place. But when I came out and I got home, I was still so weak. I mean, it was humiliating. My youngest son had to literally pick me up and put me in the bathtub and then pick me up and take me out in order to bathe. And I was that weak. But they told me it would be months before I could ever preach or think about it. And I went home in May, and on Father's Day, I preached my first sermon.
Oh, wow.
In my pulpit. They had a chair up there for me. I had no oxygen, no walker, none of that. I was done with all that. I was still weak. I was still frail.
Yeah.
But they put a chair up there for me. And I tried to sit down for a second. I'm like, I can't sit and preach. That's crazy. And so I kicked the chair back, and the crowd is just cheering, and just the miracle of what God did. And I went through a lot after I got home. I had a lot of long haul COVID things that I dealt with for 2 years. Memory. Mm-hmm. I had memory loss. I had brain fog. I deal with that from time to time still, after all these years now. And man, it's real. It was a horrible thing. I went through some therapy because of all the PTSD and everything that I suffered while I was in there. I was having night terrors when I got home.
I'm glad you mentioned the mental health. I mean, it's a big aspect of what we do here.
It's real. And I'm not one of those guys, and it seems like in faith circles so many times that's spoken of. Therapists or psychiatrists or whatever are spoken of as almost like a dirty word, like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm like, get the help however you need it.
Someone.
Talk to somebody.
Thank you for saying that.
Do
That's
that.
an important message.
It's so important. And I went through some therapy afterwards and spoke to a therapist. Of course, I was having to do it by phone. And it helped me immensely because I was having night terrors. I would wake up in the night and I couldn't breathe.
Thinking
I was
you were back
on the
hospital.
vent.
Yeah.
I was terrified to go to sleep. I was having all this memory recall, all this stuff from the trauma I went through and the PTSD. And so therapists helped me immensely. And it's so sad because now that's on my record that I went through therapy and my life insurance came due, and they didn't want to renew because of having gone through mental health issues.
That's healing, though.
I said, "Are you kidding me right now?" And so even society fights against, and the odds are against you. But I say, if you need it, if you don't know and you're feeling this depression, this heaviness, whatever it is,
Yeah.
or any symptoms, man, see somebody, talk to somebody. I believe that we would stop there being so much suicide and so many mental health issues if people would just speak. But when you bottle that up and you hold it in,
Yeah.
it doesn't get better, it gets worse. And so, yeah, I'm a big advocate for
Thank you
mental
so
health.
much for sharing. Yeah. Mark Wallace, everybody.
Hey, well, real quick, all of the things that they've said tonight, this morning, have you guys considered a movie? I mean, this is all based on. I could watch
so
this movie.
wild that you say that
Here's
because
the script right here.
people who have read the book said over and over, this should be a movie.
Yeah.
And I can see it in my eyes.
I kind of see it when you
right?
say that,
I mean,
yeah.
I could see the play-by-play. When you read the book, you'll be like, oh my God, this is a movie. And I don't know, maybe someday, who knows?
I hope so. Hey,
I
look
mean,
for
you
the
had the
movie.
beginning.
If there's any
the
producers
origin,
out there, if there's anybody that wants to take on the
check it out.
project,
yeah,
it'd be
so
a good one.
I think that
So,
would be awesome.
The
I'd
book
watch it.
is I'm Not Done When There Is No Hope, But God Says Live by Mark A. Wallace. I'm sure Tammy had some input on this one as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
guys can find the book. We're going to get you a link to this where you can purchase the book online and enjoy it because it's a lot more detailed than you were able to hear today. I think today was just kind of nipping the. Right,
Oh, there's so much
just
more.
so much more. So check out the book, please. It's called I'm Not Done. Let's get a round of applause for Mark Wallace and his lovely wife, Tammy, for coming to share today.
I love it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
It's RobLive, and we are leaving again, as always, like we like to sign off. Right, Jim?
Yep.
With love, peace, and chicken grease. We out.
Love it.